song and burst all night long. Fancy helping some faces young and old to warm the hearts when it's snowing and it's cold. You're gonna have to find a crew, it can't be anyone. They'll have to be there by your side and do what must be done. So go, man, you know that you have it night through day. The pain you will feel it to bring it on with the Archie County Band. Doubts come and some may never die. So I'll ask myself, should I stop before I try? No way, man, mistake, it has been said. I'm all in, so there's nothing I'll regret. But time is ticking and there's so much that's going through my mind. Will I make it? Yes, I will. Our spirits are entwined. So let's get this show on the road. I'm here, I'll stay and I'll carry the load to bring it on with the Archie County Band. But hold on a second now, I'm starting to feel the strain. Was it a bicycle? What is wrong with my brain? Is it the end of me? No, I must still believe. So I'm still alive, you see. Heck yeah, now I'm on my way. But let's stay focused, there's still a job in hand that we must do. Cameras start to click, we know what create is something new. So go, Marty and Sarah and Mark and Matt, Owen, Smitty, McCrilly and Jamie and Lane in the Archie County Band. The Archie County Band. The Archie County Band. The Archie County Band.
Good evening, folks. You are very welcome to Bandido Talks. And the day has come, folks. It has come, the day where the Bandido is going to talk about Mr. Nolan. For those of you in Northern Ireland, I want to stop you right now. I am not talking about Stephen Nolan. I know those of you who always tune in to Bandido Talks from Northern Ireland. When I say Mr. Nolan, I do not mean Stephen Nolan. So for those of you who are about to click off and say, why the fuck is the Bandido talking about Stephen Nolan? It's not Stephen Nolan. It's Christopher Nolan. I know in the title of the show, I said, Dear Mr. Nolan. And for those of you who don't pay attention to thumbnails, you may have thought it was Stephen Nolan. It's Christopher Nolan. The mighty Christopher Nolan. We've made reference to Christopher Nolan many times across Bandido Talks' long history of shows. We've been up and going now for about 7 or 8 months, and we have referenced multiple times quotes from certain characters in Christopher Nolan's extensive catalogue of films. But we haven't actually directly talked about Nolan himself. And you see, what's happening, folks? Well, this summer, it's that time again when Christopher Nolan has his big movie release. Of course, his movie is the Odyssey. And the Odyssey, folks, has captured a lot of people's attention and interest. But you see, this is what we're going to talk about on the show this evening. It has caught people's attention and interest for what I am going to argue are the wrong reasons. When you think of Christopher Nolan, what do you think of? You think of marvelously executed movies, great casting, great story, a great plot, a complicated plot, subtle messaging. Nolan is not one for whacking you over the head in his movies trying to tell you what to think. He doesn't do that. He certainly has not done that, generally, throughout his career. He tends to leave more subtle messages. There's a lot of ambiguity in his movies. There's a lot of room for interpretation. Nolan likes this. Nolan doesn't want to tell you what to think. He doesn't want to spell it out for you. And so he leaves a lot of wriggle room in his movies so that the audience can complete the phrase. The audience can complete the sentence. The audience, using their own imagination, can complete the story. It's a very inclusive process when Nolan makes a movie. He doesn't just lay it all out, 100%. He likes to leave a few percentage points off the table. And that leaves this wriggle room for the audience to fill in the blanks. Great stuff. I love this about Nolan in terms of his approach towards creating movies. He never wants to absolutely have you feel as if he's telling you what to think. So look, let me get one thing clear. Throughout Nolan's extensive back catalogue at this stage, all the movies that he's produced so far, I will happily say that thus far, I've been very pleased with a large amount of Christopher Nolan's work. The Dark Knight trilogy, The Prestige, Memento, Inception, Interstellar, Tenet. Those are my favourite Nolan movies. Dunkirk, World War II, technically a very good movie. The way he approached it, with his different interpretations of time, 1 day, 1 week, or something, 1 hour. For those of you who have seen Dunkirk, that will make sense. The way in which he played with time. People out at sea, people up in the air, people on the ground. You know, it was cleverly put together, but you know, it's World War II. It's nothing new, nothing novel. His approach was interesting, but you know, the subject material, World War II, we've seen this a million times. And then, you know, Oppenheimer. Again, it's sort of within the realm of reality. It's taking a real person who lived a real life. And yes, Nolan does all of his little interesting movie tricks. Black and white, color imagery, playing with time again. But you know, I think Nolan is at his best when he's producing original ideas that are his. Inception, Memento, Interstellar, Tenet. I like when Nolan has an original idea and he explores his own original idea. He has created a world that is authentically his. Now, of course, there are always exceptions to this. The Dark Knight trilogy, Nolan did not invent Batman, but he had a fantastic interpretation of Batman. That would be the exception to what I've just said. But in general, I really like when Nolan takes his own original idea that's completely his own. But look, everybody's going to have their order. You know, my favourites, The Prestige, which isn't an original idea either, but it's still a really good movie. The Dark Knight, Inception, Interstellar, Tenet, Memento. You know, those would be my favourites. Dunkirk, okay. Oppenheimer, I haven't even rewatched it. I've only watched it once. And then some of his earlier movies, the one with Robin Williams, again, it's okay. I haven't rewatched it either. So look, most of Nolan's movies definitely get the green tick of approval from the Bandido. Very happy, I have to say. He's definitely one of the very few movie makers that I will tune into. I'll pay attention when they are releasing something. So let me get that clear. I'm not a Nolan critic in the negative sense. I'm not looking to bash Nolan over the head and make a career out of criticizing the man negatively. I'll of course critically analyze his work, but I'm not one of these people who just wants to criticize him negatively for the sake of doing it, just because he happens to be really good at what he does. Now here's the thing, folks. The thing that makes Nolan great, what makes him great? Well, when he decides to make a movie, it's all about the movie. Nobody really knows anything about Nolan. He keeps himself pretty private. Keeps his life private. So he himself, he's not some swashbuckling character who's out there craving the limelight. You know, he doesn't make it about himself. It's all about the story. And whenever Nolan is getting ready to release a movie, everyone, myself included, is really excited about the story, the plot. How is Nolan going to approach this project? It's all about the movie. That is until the Odyssey came along. This is the first time, folks, that Christopher Nolan is about to release a movie, and it's not all about the movie. This is a problem for me. It's the first time where everybody is not necessarily looking forward to the movie itself. Everyone, I'm saying everyone, but a lot of people have an eyebrow raised at his casting. Who he has casted in the movie. He has now done something, Nolan has done something unusual, which is he has made decisions in his casting that's actually taking people's attention away from the story. This normally doesn't happen. Now, who are we specifically talking about here? Well, let's address the elephant in the room. You know, what is this show about, folks? You saw it in the thumbnail, the title of the show. First impressions are important. First impressions matter. If you have a viewing public, in this case, people who consume movies, if you generate a negative first impression with the viewing public, you have an uphill battle. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm not saying you'll never win these people over. But you've just created an unnecessary uphill struggle. You didn't need to do it, but you've now created it. What's the elephant in the room? The elephant in the room is that Nolan has a tranny in his movie. That's the elephant in the room. I know some people are saying, oh, well, he's cast a black woman and he's got, all the diversity in the cast, women here and all of that stuff. Well, look, say what you want about the black woman that's been cast. At least she's a woman, as far as we can tell. You may not like how she looks. You may not find her the most attractive woman in the world. At least she's a woman. That's a start. I'm willing to suspend judgment on something like that until I see how she acts. Fair enough. But when you're going to bring a tranny into your movie, someone who was a woman but is now masquerading as a man, and you're now going to get this woman masquerading as a man to act the role of a man. What are we supposed to make of this? Like, folks, the elephant in the room is Elliot Page, formerly known as Ellen Page. Of course, Ellen Page was a woman, and now we have Elliot Page, who is supposed to be a man. That's what we're supposed to believe. And Nolan seemed to think there was nobody else that he could find on planet Earth. Folks, think about how big planet Earth is. Think of all the magnificently talented people, actors on planet Earth. When you think about it, was there nobody else? Was there no other man? There was no other male actor. Is that what you're telling me? There was no other male actor that Nolan could have got for this movie to play the role of a fucking man. You would think that men would be well qualified to play the role of a man. Is that not what logic tells you? No, we're not going to do that. We're going to go get the woman masquerading as a man to play a man. Make that make sense from a logic standpoint. So Nolan, already, folks, I haven't even seen the movie, but something unusual has happened in the Christopher Nolan career. For the first time, and I'm just speaking from my own perspective, for the first time ever, there's a Christopher Nolan movie coming out whereby I don't care about the movie. The Odyssey. Honestly, folks, you see the story. I have to be honest. I don't care. I'm not even thinking about the story. You know what I'm thinking of? I'm thinking, why the fuck is there a woman acting like a man or pretending to be a man? Oh, you can't say she's pretending. She's found her inner man. Okay. If that's what you want to think, that Ellen Page found her inner man, all right. Well, for the first time ever in my life, following Christopher Nolan's career, I am not even remotely interested in his movie because I am distracted by this fucking fiasco with regards to his casting. You are not going to sell me the notion that Nolan couldn't find some other man to act out the role of a man. Let me tell you this. Elliot Page. I have no problem with Elliot Page acting out the role of a tranny. You see, if there's some movie that's created and the main character in the movie is a tranny who has transitioned from a female to a male, bring in Elliot Page, the perfect candidate. But you see that movie? I ain't going to be touching that thing with the proverbial 12-foot pole because I know what I'm getting. Fine. Folks, if I want to see a whole bunch of trannies, I'll go to an LGBTQ march. That's what I'll do. They have their marches. I'm sure there's a section of the entertainment industry that loves a good old tranny get-together. Great. No problem. If the marketplace wants that, if the very niche tranny marketplace wants tranny movies, well, how about it? You give it to them. But Christopher Nolan, Lord Jesus, Christopher Nolan, of all people, could Christopher Nolan, with his attractive power, think of Christopher Nolan. He's probably one of the great movie directors of our time. Could Christopher Nolan, with his attractive power, with his reputation, with his skill that he's developed over all these years, the team that he's acquired, his ability to cast accurately, could he not have found someone else? Now you might say, well, you haven't seen the movie. So how do you not know that Elliot Page, he or she, what are we even going to call this person? I'm going to call it a she. Because it is a she. I don't care if you chemically castrate yourself and you fucking attach a rubber schlong to your body. That's fine. If that makes you feel good, good for you. Elliot Page is a she pretending to be a he. If Elliot Page wants to do that, fine. But I understand what you might say to me. You will say, you haven't seen the movie. For all you know, Elliot Page could have acted her role magnificently. And you might say to me, if you, Mr. Bandido, would just watch the movie, if you would just watch the movie with an open mind, a non-judgmental mind, then you might find that Elliot Page produces a masterful acting performance. And you wouldn't even know that she's a tranny. Great. I understand that point of view. Now look, let me make something else clear. Will I ever watch the Odyssey? Yes, I will. I will watch the movie. I'm not saying that I'm not going to watch the movie. So whenever you give me that argument of, well, why don't you not just watch the movie? I will watch the movie. Now, I'm going to say something else. For the first time ever, I'm not going to go to the movie theater to watch it. For the reasons that I'm going to explain here in this show. So for the first time, I won't be going to the movie theater. Christopher Nolan wants us all to go and live the experience of his movies in the movie theater. Well, I won't be going to do that this time. I'm just going to wait until it comes out on a streaming platform and I'll watch it from home. So I will watch the movie, but I'm not watching it in the movie theater for reasons that I'm going to explain now. So your argument doesn't work because I am going to watch the movie. The point of this show is not whether I should watch the movie. I will watch the movie. The point of this show is why first impressions matter. That is what we're going to talk about. Because for the first time, as I've said, I'm not actually interested in Nolan's movie. Because Nolan has decided to do something with the casting of Elliot Page that is actually detracting from his movie. Why would you do this? Why would any creative person want to detract from their movie. Now, you might counter that and say, well, hold on a second. What do you mean detracting? Well, sure, is this not generating a whole bunch of publicity? There's no such thing as bad publicity. Well, you see, here's the thing. That is true. Publicity is publicity. So yes, a lot of people are talking about Nolan's movie. That's true. However, Nolan's decision may have got more people talking about the movie as a whole. But I can only speak for myself. Christopher Nolan is one of the most well-known movie directors in the world. When he releases a movie, it only gets released every 3 or 4 years. It's basically like an Olympic cycle. When Nolan releases a movie, everyone talks about his movies anyway. Nolan has never been short on attention for his movies. He has one of the biggest studios in the world promoting his movie. And he's Christopher Nolan, the director of the Dark Knight trilogy, director of Inception, Interstellar, all of these movies. Everybody talks about Nolan's movies anyway. But here is the difference. People talk about Nolan's movies for the right reasons, normally. What are the right reasons? The right reasons are, people normally talk about Nolan's movies because of the art itself. The art being the movie, the story, the plot. How the acting comes together within this story and plot. That is what people are interested in with Christopher Nolan. In an age of CGI, fucking green screens, and shit acting. Throw AI into the equation as well now. Nolan is unique. He does as much of the movie on a physical set as possible. And this is cool. This is unique. People love this. People love the fact that Nolan does everything he can to do everything in real time with real people on a real set. With minimal CGI. Only when it's necessary will he use that stuff. People love, again, I'll speak for myself. I love Nolan's movies. Not just from that perspective or for that reason, but because I'm so fascinated in his story. I want to see what he's going to do in the movie. I want to see what he's going to do with time, how he's going to play with it. I want to see how he's going to introduce this complexity into the plot. But this time, I'm not interested in any of that. Nolan, through his casting, has distracted me. And I actually like Nolan. I like his previous works. And I, as a long-time consumer of Christopher Nolan's content, I am distracted. Why? I'm distracted because I've got this bizarre casting choice that doesn't make any sense through a logic filter. And what this casting choice is doing is it's taking away from Nolan's story for me. Because it has me thinking about something else that I shouldn't be thinking about. This is what good casting is all about. Casting should be done in a way that it doesn't detract from the movie. You shouldn't be making a big song and dance about who you've cast in the movie. It's not about the people. It's not about the real life actors. It's about the fucking movie. It's about the story. But notice what's happened this time. Nolan's movie, it's all about why there's a fucking tranny in it. That's what a lot of people are talking about. That's what I'm thinking. And again, I'm not saying that someone can't be a transgender person. Do whatever you want. But if you're going to stick a transgender person on a screen and shoot them in a movie. Folks, let's not deny the obvious. If you used to be a woman and you've now transitioned to a man, you look weird. Let's be honest here. Your eye, the human eye, is able to pick up the weirdness in Elliot Page's appearance. How many times, folks, have we seen a transgender man or woman and we sort of take a double look? We're like, what the fuck am I looking at? What's that? Is that a man or a woman? What is it? Our eye can pick up that something isn't right. Something's off. And if I'm watching a movie and this is going through my head, it's distracting me from the movie. This is the point. And before I even watch the movie, I am now bringing this baggage into the movie. And then when I see Elliot Page's big face up on the movie screen, I'm going to be thinking, yeah, here we have this person trying to sell me the notion that they're a man when they clearly look weird. It's detracting from Nolan's own story. He's decided to, for whatever reason, and we could all speculate as to why Nolan has decided that now is the time to hire a tranny. We can all speculate on that. You know, you'll notice in the thumbnail, Nolan's holding up his Oscars or his fucking Golden Globes. I don't even know which they are. Remember last year when Nolan swept the board, or whenever it was, 2 years ago? I can't even remember. He swept the board with Oppenheimer. Remember everybody had a boner over Oppenheimer? And he just cleaned up at all the award shows. You know, is it possible, speculation here of course, is it possible that now Nolan is an accepted member of the movie club? And what happens when you become an official member of the club? Well, the club normally has rules. And normally, when you're accepted into the club, people sit above you in the hierarchy of the club. In other words, you have a boss. And if you're accepted into the club, you're going to abide by the boss's rules. Is it possible that Nolan was contractually obligated to have his movie? He needed to have a diverse cast? Is that a leap to say that, folks? So we can speculate on why now is the time to have a tranny in a Christopher Nolan movie. Interesting. But here's the thing. This casting choice has not only distracted me, it has literally taken my eye off the ball. Instead of me focusing on what I should be focusing on, which is Nolan's movie, I'm thinking about Elliot fucking Page. And that's pissing me off. So every time I hear anything about the Odyssey, I don't think about Homer. I don't think about the story. I don't think about ancient Greece or wherever the fuck it's located in. That's not what I'm thinking. I'm thinking, why is Elliot Page going to appear in this movie acting the role of a man when Elliot Page is a woman? Why? That's what I'm thinking. I'm distracted. And then not only that, but folks, I'm going to make a prediction. And look, I'm an open man. I'm an open book in a sense. I have an open mind. I'm happy to admit I was wrong. No problem. But I'm going to make a prediction. Now you might say, well, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. But you're going to have to take my word for it. Look, folks, I always talk about being fair. And I will be fair. I will watch the movie. And I will try, to the best of my ability, to watch this movie through as objective a lens as I can. I can never be fully objective. You know, I have my thoughts and feelings towards what Nolan has done with his casting, but I'll do my best. I'll try to be as objective as I can. I'll try to watch the movie. I'll try to use my imagination. I'll try to thoroughly analyze Elliot Page's performance. I'll do my best. So I will watch the movie. I will go to the source. And I will try. But I'm going to make a prediction. And my prediction is based off past experience of observing transgender people. That's what it's based off. When I see a transgender person, they give me the fucking creeps. Now let me clarify. I'm not saying they are bad people. I'm not saying they are evil people. I'm not saying that they have a bad character. I'm not saying they're morally compromised people. I'm not saying that they shouldn't have any rights. I'm not saying they should be thrown in the gulag. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just telling you that the lens through which I see the world, when I see someone who should be a man looking like a woman and vice versa, when I see a woman trying to look like a man, that creeps me out. In other words, if I'm walking down the street and I'm thinking about something, let's say I'm thinking about my own fictional story that I'm writing. Let's say I'm thinking about the characters and a certain plot line. If I'm walking down the street, just brainstorming in my own head while the sun is striking my face. If I'm walking down the street and I'm thinking about this, and all of a sudden, a transgender person catches my eye, that will distract me. It will make me go, Jesus Christ of Almighty, look at that. And it will literally, for a few seconds, it will take me out of the zone that I was in, and it'll make me start looking at this person, and it'll cause this invasion of other thoughts and feelings that weren't there before. And this invasion of thoughts and feelings distract me from what I was trying to focus on. It is exactly the same thing here. This is my prediction. I can almost predict what's going to happen when I watch this movie. When I look at Elliot Page on screen, I am going to have a creepy feeling, a disgusted feeling, not disgusted at the character of the person, a disgusted feeling because something looks off with their appearance. They look like they've had their appearance altered artificially, and they look weird and creepy. And the creepiness that starts to be generated from within my mind will distract me from Nolan's movie. I will try to watch the movie, but I will almost be able to predict what's going to happen. I will try very hard to watch this movie, but as soon as Elliot Page's face appears on the screen, it will distract me. It'll take my attention away and my focus away from where it should be, which is on the movie, the story, the plot, all the brilliant things that we love about a Christopher Nolan movie. I will be distracted from all of those. That's my prediction. Now I will. Hold me to this for any of you who are watching this show. I will, after I watch the Odyssey, whenever it is, I don't know when it will be. Fuck knows when. I'm not going to the movies. I'm not going to the movie theater. Because Christopher Nolan, let me tell you something, folks. Christopher Nolan is competing for my time, energy, and attention. That's what Christopher Nolan is he's in a marketplace here. He's in a competitive arena, let's just say. And there are a lot of things vying for my time, energy, and attention. Now, here's the interesting thing. I have a finite amount of time, energy, and attention. I can't create more of it. When I use up time, energy, and attention, it's gone. I never get it back. So I need to be careful, not paranoid, but I just need to be careful. I need to be aware, is a better word, of how I'm using my time, energy, and attention. And this is why first impressions are important. And it's why first impressions matter. Because first impressions can give you some very important information that may prevent you against misusing your time, energy, and attention. Now, I'm not saying first impressions are everything, but they are very important because first impressions allow me to quickly decipher if the thing that I'm thinking of doing is worth my time, energy, and attention. And I can tell you right now, what Nolan has done with his casting, I'm just speaking from my own perspective, what he has done with his casting is he has generated a negative first impression in me of his upcoming movie, The Odyssey. It's a negative first impression for all the reasons that I've just explained. Having a transgender person on screen, a woman who has transitioned to a man acting a male role, is weird. They are going to probably look weird on screen. They're going to creep me out because I'm going to be looking at this person bringing all the baggage from all of this negative, what I would call negative PR surrounding his casting choices. I'm going to bring that baggage into the movie, and then as I desperately try to be objective, every time Elliot Page's face appears on the screen, it will distract me once again. It'll capture my attention in a negative way and get me to focus not on the story, not on the movie, but on Elliot Page's fucking transition from woman to man. That's what I'll be thinking of. I won't be thinking of all of those hours of effort that Nolan put into his plot, into his story, into everything else, into the set, into the shooting of the movie. I'll not be thinking of any of that. I'll be thinking, why is Elliot Page on this screen? She's a woman pretending to be a man, acting a male role. What the fuck is going on here? I'm distracted. I'm not going to the movie theatre to watch that because my first impression is telling me this is probably going to be a misuse of my time. It's quite likely that I'm going to get pissed off in the movie theatre when I see this. And I'm not going to drive out to a movie theatre, spend money that I don't need to spend to watch something that pisses me off in all probabilities. I would rather be pissed off in the house watching The Odyssey on a streaming platform. Great. Because you know what? If I decide that it's a heap of shite, I can just turn it off and go about the rest of my day. I don't have to travel anywhere. I don't have to use up more time, more energy, or have my attention misused, or abused, I should say. And here's the thing. I said it in the description of the show. When you generate a negative first impression, Nolan, let me repeat, has generated a negative first impression for me. I'm not thinking about his movie, I'm thinking about his wacky casting choices. You see, whenever you generate a negative first impression, folks, it is an uphill battle. It's difficult. Nolan may be able to turn my head and convince me that his movie is great, but boy does he have an uphill struggle. And I'll tell you why. This is why first impressions are so important, folks. You need to be very aware of how you are presenting yourself to the world. You need to make sure that you're presenting yourself how you want to be presented. Because if you're generating negative first impressions, unknowingly, this is a problem. Because trying to overturn a negative first impression is very difficult. Uphill battle. And I'm going to explain why. The reason why it's an uphill struggle or an uphill battle is because when someone generates the negative first impression, you now need to convince them to change their mind. What do you need people to do What do you need from people in order to change their mind? You need more of their time, energy, and attention. They've already given you time, energy, and attention, and you, on your first attempt, generated a negative first impression. Now you are basically asking people to defeat their energy conservation mechanism and to give you more time, energy, and attention when the competitive marketplace is trying to capture those exact same finite resources elsewhere. You are asking people to give you a second chance. You're asking people to give you another audience, to give you another crack of the, we could say, another opportunity to prove yourself. But folks, when you go back for a second bite at the cherry to try and convince people, you are now depending on those people to overcome their energy conservation. We talk about this all the time on the show, folks. We've talked about channel factors. When you introduce a channel factor, what you're basically introducing is an obstacle. You're putting an obstacle in someone's path towards doing something that you want them to do. I'll give you a basic example. Here's my guitar. If I want to play the guitar more often, I need to keep the guitar out on a guitar stand. Because if I pack my guitar away into its case and put it up onto the attic, what have I done? I've created an obstacle to playing the guitar. I need to go up onto the attic, I need to bring the case down, I need to open the case, and I need to pick the guitar up out of the case. In other words, you are forcing me into investing more additional energy, time, and attention that I would otherwise not have to invest had I just put the guitar on the guitar stand. If you want people to do things in life, folks, like go see your fucking movie in the movie theater or watch it on a streaming platform, you want to be removing channel factors. In other words, you want to remove obstacles that would otherwise force people into investing more energy than they would otherwise need to invest, and you would require them to therefore go against their energy conservation mechanism. If you generate a negative first impression, you have now just introduced a channel factor, because for you to convince this person, you're first going to have to convince them before you say anything. Before you even mount your argument, you're going to first have to convince them to even give you their attention, which is going to require that person to invest energy in giving you a second chance. That's a channel factor. You're putting an obstacle in the way of someone. If you had just imparted a positive first impression, you wouldn't have had the channel factor to overcome in the first place. If you had just generated this really curious, interested feeling in the person that makes the person want to go and watch your movie, you don't have to convince them of anything. You don't have to batter them over the head and say, please come watch my movie. You've already stoked their curiosity and their interest. They are coming to watch your movie. Why? Because you've made a positive first impression. And that positive first impression will very likely lead them to investing time, energy, and attention in going to watch your movie. But what happens if you generate a negative first impression? Well, not only do you have to mount the argument again, which is going to require that person to divert time, energy, and attention towards you, but before you can even do that, you need to capture their attention and even persuade them to listen to you again. In other words, they don't really have an incentive to listen to you again because you've already given them a negative first impression. Folks, you can see the fiasco that you've created here. when you impart a negative first impression on someone's mind. So the trick is, don't be giving people negative first impressions of who it is that you are or what it is that you are presenting to them, that you perhaps want them to consume or purchase. And this is why, folks, first impressions are extremely important, and it's why they matter. If you impart a negative first impression on someone, the reason why you have an uphill battle from this point forward is because you now need to do two things. You need to incentivize them to even listen to you again, and then number two, you have to mount another successful argument to try and twist their head, twist their mind, to try and convince them that they actually incorrectly assessed who it is that you were and what it was that you were presenting. Folks, in order for you to successfully convince someone that they were wrong in their first impression and that they need to alter their perspective towards you, in order for you to do that, you need them to go against their energy conservation mechanism. You need them to find extra energy, extra time, extra attention to now devote it to you once again. You've already had your first chance and you fucked it up. So you're now asking people to go again. Folks, this is a channel factor, and it's a big channel factor. And when I say channel factor, what am I saying? Think of channel factors like obstacles. It's as simple as that. A channel factor is an obstacle. Imagine I told you that in order to go up the stairs so that you can sleep in bed, that you have to, let's say there's a whole bunch of rattlesnakes. Let's say I've sprinkled 500 rattlesnakes all over your stairs and over the upstairs of your house. In order for you to, painfully make your way through all of those rattlesnakes, think of the sheer energy investment into trying to solve that problem. Imagine I've 500 rattlesnakes all over your stairs, all over the floor of the upstairs part of your house. Imagine the effort that you would need to invest to get up the stairs, across the landing, into your room and up onto your bed to sleep when there are so many rattlesnakes across the floor. You would simply look at this and say, holy fuck, I'm not going upstairs to sleep, because the amount of energy that I would have to invest into avoiding getting bitten by these rattlesnakes is not worth sleeping upstairs. I'll sleep somewhere else. In other words, you have provided an obstacle to going upstairs, crossing the landing, getting into your room, and then climbing into bed. And that channel factor or obstacle is more than enough to dissuade you from going up the stairs. Of course you would, because you would acknowledge, Jesus Christ, in order for me to avoid getting bitten here, I'm going to have to pay so much attention and be so diligent as I climb the stairs and walk across the floor of the upstairs part of the house. It's not worth it, in other words. It's too much of a cost. It's a costly use of your energy. It's not worth it. You'll probably get bitten. And in order not to be bitten, you're going to need some specialized equipment that you're going to have to go and buy. You're going to have to develop some elaborate strategy. No, you'll not bother your hole. You'll just go sleep somewhere else that night because it's not worth it. And Christopher Nolan, to bring it back to our mate Chris, by him imparting a negative first impression in me through his casting choices, he has introduced a channel factor into my perspective towards his movie. There's a channel factor that's been introduced here. And that's why I'm not going to the movie theater. Because Nolan has given me an impression that I'm not going to like this movie. Whether I'm right or wrong, it actually doesn't matter. Because that's the first impression that he's given me. And let me remind you, he has never, throughout his career, given me this impression before. Ever. Every time there's been a Nolan movie, I've always been excited and keen to see what he was going to do with the story. I was never distracted going into it, thinking about something else. In other words, every other time Nolan released a movie, I had a positive first impression. And so, there was no channel factor for me to overcome. There was no obstacle for me to overcome. And you see, this is the problem when you have a negative first impression. And it has literally cost Christopher Nolan my vote of approval for his movie in the movie theater. And it'll probably do the same thing for other people as well. If I'm thinking this, other people will be thinking this too. And it's taking away from the important thing, which is the movie, the story, the plot, the underlying subtle messages that Nolan normally, brilliantly imparts in his movies. I'm not thinking of any of that. And the problem now is, Christopher Nolan is going to have to convince me that I'm wrong. And he's got an uphill battle. Now, because I'm a person who is probably much more fur than average, I'm a pretty fur individual. Most people with my outlook towards Nolan's movie would just say, fuck Nolan, I'm not watching this. I will be fur and I will overcome my energy conservation mechanism. I will actively go against it. And I will give Nolan a chance. I will watch his movie. I will literally have to invest energy that I would otherwise have not had to invest into convincing myself to watch the movie. Normally I don't have to do this, but now I do. And that is a channel factor, but I'm willing, because I'm a fair man, to go to the source and give it a fair crack of the whip. I will do it. But you can see the problem. And this is why, folks, broadly speaking, first impressions matter. The last thing you want to do, if you're trying to get along with someone, or you're trying to sell someone a service or product, the last thing you want to do is to generate a negative first impression. Because once you do that, you have a very uphill battle in order to try and regain that person that you've now lost. They aren't lost forever, but it's going to be very difficult to get them back. And it's now out of your control to a degree, because you're now going to be dependent upon that person beating their own energy conservation. And how is it that they are going to beat their energy conservation? Well, they're going to have to first even give you the opportunity to mount your argument. For them to do that, they need to literally consciously invest energy to do that. Most people couldn't be arsed doing that, folks. Most people are energy conserving machines. You only have to give them an inch. Not even an inch, a millimeter. And they're done. If someone has to invest a millimeter more of energy, of muscular movement to make up the distance of a millimeter, fucking people couldn't be arsed. The entire entertainment business is very competitive because we've got social media. So you're Christopher Nolan, upon imparting a negative first impression in a whole bunch of people, is now going to be asking those people to give up other forms of entertainment, other forms of satisfying content, so that he can have another bite at the cherry, a second bite at the cherry. That's a big ask, because you're now asking those people who are currently not interested in your movie because of your negative first impression that you imparted, you're now asking those people to give up watching this content over here that they're enjoying so that they can hear you mount another argument again to convince them that you're right and they're wrong about their first impression. This is a big ask, folks. That's a big channel factor to overcome in a competitive marketplace where everybody's vying for everybody else's attention. We know this, folks, from social media. If you don't capture someone's attention quickly, scroll, 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 you're going to lose out. And so, what do we call that? Well, we can call it many things. But if you release a piece of content and someone scrolls past it, you clearly haven't made a sufficiently positive first impression. That's why they scrolled on. And Nolan is in a world now where the entertainment space, broadly speaking, is very competitive. Even more competitive than what it was years ago when he was making his movies. And for Nolan to do this, maybe Nolan, who knows, maybe he's more calculated than we all think. Maybe he deliberately casted fucking Elliot Page so that it would create all this noise and get people's eyeballs on his movie. I don't buy that, because Christopher Nolan isn't an up-and-coming movie director who's trying to cut his teeth. He's at the top of the game. He's one of the greats of his generation. He's got one of the biggest studios on the planet promoting his movie. I don't think he's going to have a problem with capturing people's attention. He's Christopher fucking Nolan. And he's got Universal, isn't it? Universal backing him. Fuck me. If Christopher Nolan thought casting a tranny was a necessary thing to do for that reason, well then, he's a dipshit. Because for me, who has been a long time consumer of his content, of his movies, he has turned me off completely. And only I, unlike most other people, only I am a fair man, and only I am willing to go against my energy conservation mechanism and give him a second chance, because I'm going to give him a second chance. Pretty much any other movie director would be cooked at this stage. Cooked. If I saw some other movie director do what Nolan has done, I'm not watching it. Wouldn't watch it. I just think to myself, no, that first impression is so negative that I am not willing to give this person a second chance. I'm not willing to give up my finite resources, time, energy, and attention to give them another chance. Nope. There are other things that I can watch and consume other than that garbage. So I'm being so generous to Christopher Nolan. And I would be an anomaly. Most people won't bother their hoe. Most people will see the tranny. They'll look at Nolan, mopping up the Oscars and Golden Globes. They'll think he's part of the club. They'll think that he's pushing a political agenda. He's pushing some agenda other than that of his movie. And people will fucking tune out. People will say, Christopher Nolan's been bought over. Christopher Nolan has sold out. Christopher Nolan has bent the knee. This is what people will say. You don't need to give them much, folks. Give them a millimeter. That's all they need. People will say that Nolan has just sold his soul and that he has yielded to the demands of some other paymaster and that he's forcing a tranny into his movie to make some sort of a fucking political point that has fuck all to do with his movie. Most people won't do what I'll do. Most people won't go against their energy conservation and give him a second chance. I will, and he's fucking lucky that I am going to do that. But, as I said in my prediction, I have a very strong feeling what's going to happen when I do watch his movie. I'm going to predict that this is going to be my least favourite Christopher Nolan movie by quite a distance. It's almost an inevitability, because my feelings towards transgender people are what they are. You may not like them, but transgender people creep me out. Doesn't mean they are bad people. They may have outstanding character. Maybe they do. It doesn't matter. They creep me out. Anyone who decides to chemically castrate themselves, start chopping their body up, getting a whole bunch of surgery, and doing strange looking things is going to creep me out. It's going to instinctively want me to create distance between them. And better still, when I'm looking at someone who should be a woman but is now dressed and trying to look like a man, that creates cognitive dissonance in my mind. And what happens when you have cognitive dissonance in your mind? You are distracted. And if I'm watching Elliot Page with a whole bunch of cognitive dissonance throughout the Odyssey, I'm not paying attention to what I should be paying attention to. So I'm pretty sure that this is going to be the stinker. I always talked about this with my brother. When was Nolan gonna have his stinker? He hasn't had it yet. Some of his movies I prefer more than others. As I said, Dunkirk and Oppenheimer. Technically good movies, but not my cup of tea. But I can't fault the quality of the movie within the parameters that it was set. This movie, I think it's going to be the stinker. Maybe, maybe I'm shooting from the hip. Maybe I'll be wrong. But mark my words, folks, I will come back. When I watch the Odyssey, which I will do, and I'll try to do it as objectively as possible, I will come back and do another show and tell you what I thought. And I'll reference this show. I'll put it in the description and you'll be able to go and watch this show 6 months later, 12 months later, who knows when. And you can see if my mind was changed or if my prediction came true. Let's see. Time will tell. I'll go to the source, I'll go to the movie, and I'll give it a go. But I have low expectations because I have had a negative first impression generated within me. And it's going to take an awful lot of convincing from Christopher Nolan to overturn that negative first impression and put it into a positive light. It's going to take a lot of effort. I'm willing to give him a chance. Let's see. All right. So, that is our show for this evening, folks. Always remember, first impressions are extremely important. A negative first impression will create a channel factor, also known as an obstacle. When you create channel factors / obstacles, and you put them in people's way, you are now reducing the probability that that person is going to be interested in consuming what it is that you have to offer, because you're going to be forcing them to go against their energy conservation mechanism, which is built into all animal life. The energy conservation mechanism exists so that you and I don't misuse our finite resources that we call time, energy, and attention. The energy conservation mechanism is extremely important. It guards us against misusing those finite, precious resources. So if you are forcing people to have to go against that mechanism, that's a big ask. The key is, don't impart the negative first impression. And realize that first impressions are important. They aren't the entire story, but they are important. All right. Now, let's see. Have we anybody in the chat? We don't have anybody in the chat. I thought Nolan, but sure, he's not on social media. I put this in the description, folks. Nolan, he has no email. He has no mobile phone. He has no social media presence. How is the Bandido going to get this message to Christopher Nolan? But you see, I trust that you folk are going to do the business for me. I trust that you are going to find a way to get this episode before Christopher Nolan. Because, I fear that Big Christy, my mate Christy, I fear that he's fallen into a trap. Maybe he hasn't. Maybe it'll turn out that I was wrong. But you know, it doesn't matter. Send the episode on to Nolan anyway. I'd be happy to have him on the show as a guest. We could talk about it after I watch the movie. Anyway, folks, that's everything for this evening. Again, I would encourage you to like the episode, give it a thumbs up, give it a thumbs down if you thought it was a load of bollocks. Again, get down into the comments section. Let me know what you thought. Do you agree or disagree with my take on first impressions and channel factors and the energy conservation mechanism and how all this works together? Let me know down in the comments section. And then finally, folks, if you like in general what we do here at Bandido Talks, feel free to subscribe to the channel here on YouTube. We are live on Universal Bandido time. The Bandido goes live as and when he feels like it, the day he feels like, at the time he feels like. So you're going to have to subscribe to get notified of any of our upcoming live shows and any content that we just drop in general. We've got a Bandido Swings coming tomorrow, folks. The Bandido was out on the tennis court again. So tune in tomorrow. We'll be uploading episode 2 of Bandido Swings. I'm enjoying those episodes, but you're going to have to subscribe, folks, to get access to all of this content as and when it is released. Again, folks, you will see on the scrolling black banner below that we are also live over on Rumble. Again, we have almost 40 live shows over on Rumble. Completely different live shows. Completely different topics. So, you know, if you've went through all the content here on YouTube, head over to Rumble. Scrolling black banner below. We have different live shows over there. It tends to be more political. Tends to be more US based. So if you're more into political stuff, US based stories, head over to Rumble. And you've got a whole shit ton of live shows over there. Almost 40 of them. We had a really good live show yesterday talking about the Donald Trump. Is he good or bad? That was our live show yesterday. Head over to Rumble. Check it out, folks. Subscribe over there. And then finally, you'll see again on the scrolling black banner, follow over on X. X is useful. You know, it keeps me in the loop about some of the nonsense news. It gives me ideas about things to talk about. That's why X is useful, in a sense. But it's also useful because we will notify you over there when we're going live, any of our live shows. So follow over on X. Folks, that is everything from me this Friday evening. You enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy your incoming weekend. It's going to be 22 degrees here in Ireland. I kid you not, over the next few days. I'm even getting pretty sweaty here at the moment. It's getting toasty, folks. I'm going to be enjoying the sunny weather. I'm looking forward to it. The next time you see me, my colour, the colour of my skin might have changed a little bit. I do tend to tan quite a bit. So, sunny weather coming, I'm going to be enjoying that. You enjoy your incoming weekend wherever you are. We'll see you all live next week, folks. With all of that said, it is over and out. This week on YouTube, live from the Bandido.